If the July meeting of the Metro North Committee, such as, could come to order, please. Are there any public? Mic keeps going off for some reason. Are there any public speakers?
Good morning. We have
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, members of the board. My name is Oren Getz. I'm the vice chairman of the Metro North Rail Commuter Council. And we're pleased to see that Metro North is considering purchasing 15 new locomotives for the Port Jervis line. The current locomotives will be between 40 and 50 years old. The new locomotives will have 4,400 horsepower, be able to pull longer trains. The new locomotives will also be Tier 4 compliant and have a top speed of 125 miles an hour. That's bringing the railroad into the 21st century. Metro North should also consider acquiring new passenger cars for the planned increase in service on the Port Jervis line. The best bet is to buy new multi-level coaches of the same type that New Jersey Transit uses for its fleet. It's now a major part of its fleet. It's multi-level cars, and the commuters like them. Also, these coaches are used up in Montreal, and they're used in Maryland now. So they are worthwhile that Metro North would acquire the same type of coaches for the Port Jervis line. It's great that senior Metro North staff met with Rockland County Ed Day on June 12th. To go over the issues that were very important. They're going to push for the restoration of the Second Valley, Pascack Valley Line Express train, which is critical to Rockland County. Review the operating agreement with New Jersey Transit to see if we can have stiffer controls. Fix up the Nanuet station and work on making improvements to the Suffern station. Metro North must also work on building its train station at Woodbury Common. I know I've spoken to you, Commissioner Metzger, about it, and it's time that we actually went ahead and did that. It's very important to build that station. The state is going to pay $151 million for road improvements. A station would be very worthwhile. Commissioner Glucksman and I attended the New Jersey Transit Board meeting, and simply plans the meeting was a disaster. You can touch base with Randy and find out exactly what happened at that meeting. But what did happen was they snuck in a new agenda item that's going to cause New Jersey Transit to pay $320 million to Parsons for the installation of PTC. They're way behind. We don't even know if they'll be able to meet the deadlines. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next public speaker is Jason Pinheiro.
Good morning, Metro North Committee. Good morning, Commissioner Metzger. Good morning, Catherine. And good morning, Veronica. Good to see positive trade control item in the agenda. That's a good thing. And my greatest petition is that we could see the Hudson ticket, just like the Long Island Railroad has the Atlanta ticket, that could benefit commuters between Grand Central and Riverdale, that right now they lack of transit options in the northern western side of the Bronx. And I know that Chuck Mueller will be very happy to see this. I want the committee to consider this option because it will be very cost effective and will benefit those who use the Hudson line between Grand Central and Riverdale. That's all I have to say.
And our final speaker is Murray Bowden.
My world has changed incredibly in the last few weeks. I'm now using a fiberglass stick because my balance stinks and the hiking sticks I used before were too heavy. I'm forgetting stuff, making mistakes, apologizing to people who I said inappropriate things 10 years ago, and we have to clear that because not much time to move forward. Bridge and Tunnel had arranged a meeting for me with their engineer and a consultant. And what I realized that all these things I've been asking about are better addressed by a consultant. I've said that the red box at Roaring Brook has been illegal. It's now the responsibility of the Metro-North Law Department to follow up on that, engage the same consultant and get his opinion, which is internationally recognized as correct. I'm out of it. My job is only to help all of you move forward more quickly. This is 2018. What happened 15 years ago is not relevant anymore. I've made some really stupid mistakes in my life, really stupid. At the time, I thought they were correct. Looking back, boy, I was not good. I got little time left. I want to work with who I didn't work with correctly in the past and make it easier for my grandchildren. We have a 23-year-old grandson living with us he's been here 6 weeks. He's looking for an apartment, just got a job in New York, graduated. Funny world. Was there last night. He spent the weekend with his girlfriend, and she stayed over. And tomorrow, his friend is coming to get a new job, and he's crashing with us for a couple of days. These kids think entirely differently than I do. It's a lesson. World changed. I encourage you to think about how to go forward in 2018 and not 50 years ago. I want to thank you all for the opportunity all these years to be able to come and speak here. I appreciate it. And for all those things I said that were stupid, I apologize. In the way I think today, I would never say them.
That concludes the public speakers.
Thank you. May I have a motion to approve the minutes of June 2nd? Pardon me? 1, 2, 3. No, we're good. All those in favor? Thank you. Are there any changes to the work plan?
There are no changes to the work plan.
We have your report.
So I had a whole big script for this meeting, and we were going to talk a little bit about the PTC test train, and we were going to talk a little bit about the problems we're having with sticky ticket stock and how that's affecting our monthly customers. But instead, I want to plunge right in and talk a little bit about service delivery, because we've had a challenging, I would say, 2 months. July has not been much better, to be honest with you, and I want to talk the committee through a little bit the challenges that we're experiencing and what we're doing to address those challenges. So if you go back to 2014, we had the Operation Deep Dive, we had the Blue Ribbon Panel on Safety, Joe Giletti was hired, Glenn Hayden came back, and there was a lot of talk at that point in time in terms of the trade-offs between on-time performance and safety. And we talked a lot at that point in time in terms of how you never want to do that. On-time performance is important, but you always need to be committed above all else to the safety of the railroad. And there was also a lot of talk at that point in time in terms of how we had frankly neglected the infrastructure, how we had not given the track department the time that they needed to be able to do sort of the maintenance, the cyclical stuff that you need to do to be able to tend to the railroad. And we promised at that point in time never to go back, and we continue to live by that promise today. What we're experiencing now is the after effects of that promise. We have a lot of work going on. We have work going on everywhere. On the Hudson, we have the Sandy project, which is now, what, John, 18 months behind? So we are struggling to catch up on the Sandy work. We also have cyclical track work going on the Hudson. On the Harlem, we have made an aggressive schedule change to be able to get the White Plains Station renovation done as quickly as possible. On the New Haven line, we have, I can't even tell you how much work, John will tell you how much work, and Glenn will as well. We have just an enormous amount of work going on the New Haven line, including the undercutting, which we told you about a couple months back, which is something that we've never done here before. As the result, we have lost the ability to bounce back when something goes wrong. So if you have a trespasser, if you have a mechanical problem, if you have a signal problem, we don't have the ability to bounce back when we have so many tracks out of service for infrastructure. So what are we going to do about that? We need, I think, to recalibrate a little bit. We remain committed to pushing the envelope in terms of getting the infrastructure back into a state of good repair. This is a continuing, sustained effort. Joe Giletti, God love him, told you a couple of years back it was going to be a 5-year effort. I told him last week that he's killing me because it's not going to be a 5-year effort. It's going to be a longer effort than that. It will require sustained effort on the part of our forces to get the infrastructure back to where we need it to be. But we cannot go on the way that we've gone on this summer. We have degraded our on-time performance to a point where it is not fair to our customers. John is going to talk to you a little bit in terms of the length of the delays. I mean, a lot of them are in the 6 to 10 minute category. But at the same time, you can't have a situation where 4 out of 5 days, everybody's like 7 minutes late, and then every other week they're 30 minutes late. That is just not acceptable performance. People pay too much for their tickets to be able to have that kind of performance on an ongoing basis. So what are we doing to be able to deal with this issue? One of the things that we're doing in the short term is we're going to pull the undercutter. The undercutter was supposed to have been there through the end of September. We are going to pull him at the end of this month, and we are going to redeploy the resources that were supporting the undercutter to work on other drainage and other infrastructure issues on the New Haven line, which, once resolved, should actually help some of our running times. We will bring the undercutter back. It's an important project, but I think it was a bit of a learning experience this summer, and I think the 2 tracks out of service in the heart of the New Haven line in New York was just a little bit too much for us to handle this summer. We, as I said, need to keep going. The infrastructure work is too important. The safety of our customers is too important. We will need to continue to be nimble in terms of balancing the need to aggressively push the infrastructure with the impact that that work is having on our customers. We will continue to keep our ears to the ground as far as our customers are concerned because they're telling us what they're experiencing. We have an uptick in customer complaints. We never like to see that. And most of those are related to late and canceled trains. There's no question about that. That tends to be the metric that ticks up when we have an increase in customer complaints on the customer service side. The other, I'm just like seeing what I missed. The other thing that we're experiencing, and John, as a former chief mechanical officer, can speak to this in some detail, problems with our locomotive fleet. Now, you'll recall maybe 5 or 6 months ago, we came to this committee and told you all that we wanted to defer the replacement of our M3 fleet. We took a pass on the M9 option with Kawasaki. The reason we did that was because we were seeing declining performance and alarming performance from our locomotive fleet, our Genesis locomotive fleet. And you will see in your book this month, actually, is a request to use the RFP process to replace that fleet, and we're going to try to expedite that procurement to the extent that we can. The chickens have come home to roost a little bit this summer in terms of the locomotive fleet. We've actually seen quite a bit of declining performance. It has affected our upper Hudson customers quite a bit. I know Neil, who's not here this morning, has been particularly concerned about the decline in our locomotive performance. So we have 2 things that we need to do, and we will continue to report back to the committee. Thing number 1 is we need to bridge the gap because it's going to take a little bit for those locomotives to arrive on the property. So we need to come up with a strategy and fast to make sure that we are able to improve the performance of that fleet. Thing number 2 is we need to get those locomotives on the property as quickly as possible. So we're going to explore whatever we can do to try to get that procurement as well. The procurement is now, I mean, we're going to do the RFP, but actually getting the locomotives on the property as quickly as possible. How can we expedite that? How can we do that as quickly as humanly possible? The last thing I want to touch on a little bit is PTC. It's in the book as an information item this month. It's going to go before CPOC later. The PTC project has also had an impact upon our performance this summer. We have a lot of equipment out for PTC installations, which has sort of cut into our spare margin. We also are experiencing some problems in service with respect to equipment that's been outfitted with PTC equipment, which is not unexpected. I mean, there's going to be a breaking in period. But both of those things have also had an impact upon our on-time performance this summer. So you got a couple different things going on. I'm going to turn the floor over to John in a little bit just so he can give you a little bit more detail in terms of what's going on. The one thing that I would say, just to wrap up this sort of stage setting portion of our program, is that we are in the process, and I think I mentioned this last month, of putting together our own customer-facing strategic plan. We call it Way Ahead because we want to be way ahead, and we have a way ahead to get there. So we will be unveiling Way Ahead in its full glory, I would say, the beginning of the fall. We want it to coincide with the National Customer Service Week, which is the first week of October. So our goal is to launch it to coincide with National Customer Service Week. But I don't want you to have the impression that we're waiting for National Customer Service Week to offer good customer service, because our customers are the reason that we exist, and offering excellent customer service is at the heart of what we do and why we exist. So I just want to describe two programs that we currently have to offer excellent customer service that will be part of Way Ahead, but that also exist now. The first of those is Connect With Us, which is a program that we put into place, I think, in 2014. We go from station to station, and we have a table, and we have information about Metro North, and a number of Metro North managers will be at this table. I was there at Yonkers last week. We were at Fordham the month before. We were at Chappaqua the month before that. And we listen to our customers, and we stop them on their way to the train. We hear about their experience. We take notes about what they tell us, and we respond. It's a good program. We get a lot of good feedback. We are going to be in GCT in the month of August. One of the sort of trial and error aspects of this program is trying to find a time when you actually get people to stop. We try to do people in the evening. When in the evening, people don't want to stop. People just want to get home. In the morning is a little bit better, except for the people who come to their train at literally the last minute because they never stop. But we do tend to get a better response in the morning than in the evening. But we tend to get the best response of all in GCT because people are already where they want to go. So we are going to expand our GCT sessions from 2 to 3 per year. So we have one scheduled in the month of August. It's nice and cool inside. And then Randy will be happy to hear we're going to be in Nanuet in the month of September. So we continue to do this once a month. It's a good way to just sort of check in with our customers, hear what they're experiencing, take notes, and then hopefully be able to respond. The other program that we've had, I think, for, 20 years, I think at least 18 years, is our Call Ahead program for the ADA population. We have a program whereby they can call 511 to arrange for assistance navigating the system. They can arrange for this assistance as late as 15 minutes before the train is set to arrive. We're always looking to improve that program, but it is a program that we have had in place that has been very successful in terms of assisting the ADA population in terms of navigating our environment. We have roughly 140 calls a month, and it's been actually a very good program for us, and we've gotten very good feedback as the result of that program. So anyway, I think that's all I wanted to say this morning, but I do want to turn the floor over to John. He's got a little bit more in the way of granular details with respect to some of our performance challenges, really since the winter. I mean, the winter we had the storms, we had some trees down, that was challenging, but really since the weather's gotten good, we've been struggling a bit, and John's going to speak to a little bit of that. So thanks.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. First of all, I just want to reiterate what Ms. Rinaldi stated. Metro North's executive team fully understands we're not delivering the level of service our customers expect, nor is it the level of service that we would like to deliver. However, it's not due to negligence or neglect on our part. It comes about more or less by making some hard decisions to continue down the road we started back in 2014. With catching up on a lot of the deferred maintenance on our infrastructure, which actually led us to those challenges that we faced in 2013 when I first got into this position. And I, for one, don't want the railroad to go back to that place where we used to be. And it's incumbent on us at this time to leave a better foundation for the future than some of us might have gotten here in the recent past. With that, service delivery was challenged on all 3 lines and across all periods. No one group was better than the other. The Harlem line customers did see a little bit better service because back in March, we made some fairly significant modifications to the Harlem line schedule, in particular in the off-peak, to allow White Plains Station reconstruction to begin, that being a 3-year plus project. On the Hudson and New Haven lines, we did not make any schedule adjustments, and we didn't add any additional running time into the schedules. And prior to this year, we were operating with very little margin. As Kathy stated, if things don't go wrong, we have just enough time in the schedule to make it in on time. However, any glitch in the operation precipitates a few additional minutes of running time, and that puts us over the edge, and we generate a pretty significant amount of 6 to 10 minute delays. And any delays that would have been above 10 minutes get increased by that same proportion. If you want to follow along or later on take a look in my operations report starting on page 108, there's a 2-page summary of a lot of the details I'm going to talk about. So why is this year a little bit more challenging than last year? Again, we made no schedule adjustments on Hudson or New Haven line train schedules. However, we do have additional work we put into those environments. The most significant across all 3 lines is the PTC work. Although PTC work has been going on diligently over the past 4 to 5 years, we're in the final stages of getting to compliance and installing all of the wayside hardware along the infrastructure. A lot of times that takes one track out of service temporarily in the off-peaks. That combined with all of the capital work we're doing and the maintenance work we're doing basically does not allow a lot of extra tracks available to run service. To give you an example, the New Haven line, where we have 4 tracks, and you would think it would be easy or easier to provide service than in a 2-track segment, every single night, weekdays and weekends, we basically take out 75% of all New Haven tracks from service. So on the overnight hours, we basically have the equivalent of 1 track between Woodlawn and New Haven to run service. And we don't run on a 1 track, let's say track 3 all the way. We actually have to zigzag back and forth several times before a train can make it across the New Haven line. And that's to accommodate all of the capital construction work, both in New York State and more significantly in Connecticut, that's ongoing. So, for example, the catenary replacement project is in its final stages. That project was anticipated to be completed around now. Unfortunately, the contractor, due to some of things out of their control, for example, the hurricane in Puerto Rico, kind of led to additional delays on finishing that work. So that work, which was supposed to be.
John, just to explain, that was because their workers.
Yeah, that's because their workers went down to work to help out. I guess we're having some technical difficulties, so this is akin to what I deal with every single day. So every night on the New Haven line, we take out 3/4 of the tracks. Starting around 4 o'clock, we start putting those back into service. We then have a percentage of our tracks still out of service, and starting around 10 o'clock, we take additional tracks out for midday work from 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. Starting at 2 o'clock, we then start undoing the midday track work, and we get ready for the PM rush to maybe supply 50 to 70% of our available tracks. We get through the PM rush, and then we start the process over again. That same process occurs every single day on all 3 lines. And on the weekends, it's a little bit easier for us to deliver service during those periods because we run many fewer trains. And about 3 years ago, we did add additional running time in the schedules to accommodate that work period. If you look at the Hudson line, we have the Sandy work that Catherine talked about that's ongoing. On the New Haven line, just going back to that line where the major amount of work is going on, the undercutting. Last time we did undercutting was when Glenn Hayden was here as a young man in the middle to late 80s. So it's been 30 years since we've seen an undercutter. That undercutting work is required because over time, as we do track surfacing, little by little, the track raises up. Unfortunately, we have a lot of overhead bridges that limits our vertical clearance to the catenary. So we came to a point where freight operators, CSX, P&W, and others, didn't have the ability to traverse through certain segments of the New Haven line without grounding the electrical overhead. So we came to a point where we needed to de-energize the catenary in order to allow the freights to operate. So over the last 2 months, since Memorial Day, the undercutter has lowered one of the two tracks sufficiently to allow freight trains to continue. Based on that, as Kathy stated, we're going to be bringing that project to a close, and then we're going to schedule the undercutter back either next year or the following year, along with some schedule modifications to complete that necessary work. When we get older, we have to put the glasses on. Other activities, the state of Connecticut, as you know, is replacing Walk Swing Bridge. That's in the schedule to be completed in the next 5 to 7 years. But that work requires a lot of predecessor work to be completed. Just this past weekend, the state of Connecticut and their contractor were supposed to start a project at Atlantic Street in Stamford, where they're going to be renewing some undergrade bridges. That's to allow for a bus loop for development within the city of Stamford. That work will require 2 tracks to be out of service every weekend for the remainder of the summer. And once we start doing what are called jump span installations, which I believe are scheduled for now either next week or the week after, we're going to have 1 out of the 4 tracks out of service through the limits of Stamford Station, basically for 10-day consecutive periods, which means the work starts Friday night. The tracks are out of service Saturday, Sunday. They're out of service Monday through Friday. They're out of service on Saturday, and Sunday night we start returning those back. So we're going to be working from the south side to the north side. So from this point forward, there's going to be additional stress on the New Haven line customers to get through those areas. Good news is some other work for Coscob Bridge and Sound Beach and Tomac overhead bridges is going to be finished shortly. So that kind of provides an overview of what we're doing. It'd be a lot easier not to stand here to explain delays, and the easy way to do that is not to allow Mr. Hayden and the MW folks on the right-of-way. That'll make my job a lot easier this year, and maybe I could squeak by next year. But 2 or 3 years from now, we'd be in the same position we were back in 2013, where the infrastructure would be unreliable and unsafe, and we cannot allow that to happen. We provide too important a service to our customers in New York and Connecticut. We need to make sure we're still providing safe service, and we're also providing reliable service as best we can at the moment, and we're all working diligently to improve that. The actual numbers is what we should be judged on. However, I do want to point out the high number of 6 to 10 minute late trains. So to give you a line-by-line review, on the Hudson line, our OTP is 88.7% for the month of June. If you include the trains that are 6 to 10 minutes late, 95.5% of our customers arrived within 10 minutes of schedule. We had 9 trains that were canceled or terminated. Harlem line, the OTP was almost at goal. It was 92.9%. And if you include the train 6 to 10 minutes late, 97.4% of customers arrived within 10 minutes. and we had 7 trains canceled or terminated. On our New Haven line, with the lowest OTP in June, it operated at 85.6%, including the slightly late trains. 94.2% of customers arrived within 10 minutes, and they had 27 trains canceled or terminated. So overall, as a system, about 6.8% of our scheduled trains arrived within 10 minutes, and we had 43 trains canceled or terminated. And even though we increased, I'm trying to look for good news here because there is good news somewhere in here. Even though we increased the amount of infrastructure work from last year, the average train delay decreased by 20%. Last June, the average train delay was 14.8 minutes. This June, it's 11.9 minutes. The other good news is canceled and terminated trains decreased by 63%. Last June, there were 116 canceled. This June, there were 43. Kathy also touched upon conscious compliance, crowded conditions on trains, standees, and so forth. And the major driver on all 3 lines there was additional cars out of service for the PTC work. That is coming to a close by the end of this year. However, once that PTC work is completed, we still have other rolling stock and car availability challenges. As you know, we purchased 66 additional M8 cars to supplement the 405 we have in service on the New Haven side. Those cars are scheduled to start being delivered to New Haven sometime in the 3rd quarter of next year, with 16 cars being available for service by the end of 19, and the remaining cars being delivered in the 2nd quarter of 2020. But between now and then, due to the increased ridership we've had on the New Haven, there will be some standing conditions on New Haven line trains. Similar challenge exists on Hudson Line, and primarily Hudson Line because of the fairly significant diesel service we provide north of Croton-on-Hudson, Harmon to Poughkeepsie. I was involved with the original procurement of the GE Genesis locomotives back in the early 90s. The first 5 locomotives were delivered in 1995. They have a 25-year life, and they're due to be replaced in 2020 through 2025. Due to the significant concerns we have with the long-term reliability going forward, as Kathy stated, that's why we decided not to pursue the M9 option, and in lieu of that, we're working with Long Island with the M9A. The challenges we face on the Genesis fleet relate to fatigue life of car body and trucks, also relates to obsolescence of the technology that was used in those AC traction systems. It was called the GTO technology, which is technology from the 80s. Very quickly, GE's ability to support the electronics and electrical components on the Genesis is dwindling. And when we do get components, in a lot of cases, some of the quality is lacking. So we replace a part, we put a new part in, and that part fails within a relatively short period of time, which is why, again, about a year ago, we came to the board to prioritize the replacement of the Genesis fleet. And I do want to reinforce the importance for us to replace the M3 fleet, although it's performing pretty reliably since we had the $28 million performance improvement plan that we implemented a number of years ago. Again, the technology on the M3 cars is quickly becoming unsupportable by the vendor community based on those cars basically using 1960s, 1970s types of components. On our West of Hudson service, there's good news and bad news there. Overall, West of Hudson service operated below goal at 90.6%. The Port Jervis line basically was the driver for that. In the month of June, it operated at 83.4%. Pascack Valley OTP was significantly better at 96.0%. The issues we had on the Pascack Valley line last month was we had an NJT locomotive had an head-end power failure on the 6th of June. That caused late dispatchments on the 6th. And unfortunately, on June 20th, a train 1635 struck an individual between River Edge and Oradell that also tied up the Port Jervis on that evening. I mean, the Pascack Valley on that evening. On the Port Jervis, we had issues with our signal system, not directly related to our signal equipment, but our code lines west of Hudson are through leased telephone company lines. So we had about 4 to 5 days where, due to the telco issues there, we were operating with no signals through a certain section, and that also incurred additional running time. We've been working with New Jersey Transit to help them progress through some of their issues. As we've spoken about, lack of engineers on the New Jersey Transit side. Last month, 8 trains were canceled due to lack of NJT engineers. That was 8 out of 10 cancellations we had. 6 of those cancellations were on the Pascack Valley. 2 were on the Port Jervis. And all of them, except for 1, were canceled on the weekend. Let's see, equipment performance. If you talk about MDBF, our MDBF numbers are not where we would like them to be. From a pure perspective, fleet MDBF is below goal. In the month of May, since there's a 1-month lag on MDBF numbers, MDBF was only 168,477, with year-to-date at 184,000. Our goal is 200,000 for the year. As Kathy mentioned, a lot of these delays due to mechanical issues across fleets are related to the installation of the new PTC equipment. To remind the board, we started back in January, on January 20th, with the implementation of civil speed enforcement across all our operating fleets. So between January and March, we phased in this new equipment, and with that, we've discovered some infancy failures, which are to be expected with any new project, as well as some software issues in some cases. And Glenn and Anthony Forcina have been working with the SI to get those resolved, and gradually performance is improving. I do want to point out again the Genesis locomotives performing about 30% below goal, and the importance for us to expedite our work on the RFP for the replacement of those units. Again, I guess my time was up. Again, I do want to ensure the board that the Metro North team is continuing down the path we started back in 2013 and 14. We're doing a lot of good work. Some of it might not be evident per the numbers, but I can assure you every single person at Metro North is working diligently to keep the infrastructure safe and making it safer day by day. However, there is a cost involved by taking tracks out of service to do this work with regards to on-time performance. The best thing I would like to do is ask Mr. Schiffer or our planning folks to write a schedule and take trains out of the schedule to improve OTP and on-time performance. Unfortunately, that's not possible today. If you look at the ridership increases we've had, in particular in the peak periods, we have very little opportunity to cancel trains because we already have trains that are pretty full. And if we were to schedule a cancellation of a train, those people would have no other train to go to that would have any excess seats. So again, ridership being at record levels is a good thing. The bad thing is it incurs a certain amount of risk and causes us to run some delays. So I think I've spoken enough, and I'll open the floor for any questions or comments.
What is?
Kathy.
I don't.
I want to thank. I want to thank you for.
It doesn't stay on.
At the onset, the issue of delays and on-time performance in the system, and also to applaud you and the team for thinking ahead in terms of what can we do to start to mitigate these delays and start addressing on-time performance before it becomes a more critical issue. Obviously, it's a critical issue for many of us who are users of the 3 lines, but of course the staff and all of you who are doing the work. So I appreciate you thinking ahead and working to find some solutions before, a year is out and then it becomes much more of a significant problem. While you all have addressed the roots of these delays and on-time performance, maintenance issues, PTC, I know you all are in agreement with this, but with regards to capital expansion in our service territory, we've not seen significant investment and expansion in our service territory in decades. And in fact, of the existing capital program, which is $33 billion, $2.5 billion, and this is not for you all, you know this is for everybody else that's listening. $2.5 billion of that is going actually to Metro North in this capital program. And of the $7.7 billion that is being spent on expansion, none of that is really going into the MTA service territory. Most of that is actually going to East Side Access, 3rd Track, and 2nd Avenue Subway. Those projects are significantly needed also, particularly on Long Island, and I've been a big supporter of those, of 3rd Track and East Side Access. That infrastructure has not been updated since 1850s, and residents on Long Island and people working on Long Island need that infrastructure, but we've not seen that level of investment in our service territory north of New York City. Of course, we know Penn Access is in the capital program for design and study, and we're expecting to see that investment subsequently. But it is time for, as we all start preparing for the next capital program, to start making the case for some of these expansion projects. One project I would love to see is a 3rd track from Crestwood to North White Plains. And that would address not the sorts of delays you all are talking about, obviously, with PTC and maintenance, but would certainly address delays associated with congestion and increasing ridership particularly on the Harlem line. So I want to say that I am in strong support of that particular project. I think we as a board need to start turning some of our attention to these kinds of expansion projects in the Metro North service territory. And I know that you all as a staff and team have been making this case. And I think as much as we can continue to, in the presentations that you all give, deliver that same message, I think would be helpful throughout the remaining year.
The one thing I would like to say in response to that is, especially with the upcoming capital program conversation beginning now, right? There are other, we are making investments that will make those kinds of expansions possible. So upgrading power systems, construction of new yards. I mean, there's some short of actually building the 3rd track, there are other kinds of infrastructure investments that we need to be able to make to be able to support that kind of an increased, that kind of an expansion of service. The other priority from my perspective in terms of the upcoming capital program are making the investments in and around GCT. So the Park Avenue Viaduct is going to need to be replaced. We're going to need to do some additional investments in the train shed and in the terminal itself. So that's the heart of our operation. So until we make those kinds of investments, I think it's it's a matter of prioritizing where scarce capital dollars need to go. And one of the things that I'm going to be advocating for very strongly are the investments to be made in and around GCT and the viaduct, because I think those are critical investments for the health of the entire system.
Chuck?
I have a couple of questions before commenting. I noticed that you have failed to fulfill or to fill a number of important vacant positions for an extended period of time. So, for example, maintenance of equipment, maintenance of way, procurement and material management, construction management, engineering and design. In each of those areas critical to the operation of a railway, you have failed to fill those spots. This has a feel that is similar to that which occurred prior to the subway action plan. It has a feel, and indeed the statement you have just made has a ring reminiscent of Pat Nowicki's final comments. I'm troubled. Here is an area where you can get the bodies to do the job, and we're not doing it. Question number one, why?
So, a couple things. I mean, I think that we actually, with the hiring restrictions that have been in place since earlier this year, where new hires are limited to critical operating positions and safety and security related positions, we've actually been able to focus more on getting the operating positions filled. So that's helped a little bit in terms of our focus. Some of these titles, I mean, depending upon which title you're talking about, compensation can be an issue. Some of the construction manager type titles that you've alluded to, people can make more in the private sector. So it's always been a challenge to try to get those people to take jobs in the public sector, excuse me. So we're continually challenged in terms of attracting and retaining people in some of those titles. They get good experience, and then sometimes they will like to leave because they can make more money elsewhere. So compensation for some of those specialized titles is a challenge. In terms of some of the other more specialized titles, and I think you've heard about this in the context of the Subway Action Plan, signal maintainers don't grow on trees. So we need to be nimble in terms of trying to create pathways for people to want to go into these jobs. So we're very engaged in terms of trying to get people into the Metro North family, trying to get people to understand that these are good, well-paying jobs with a future. So I think it's a multi-pronged strategy to try to attract and retain people in these positions. The thing that I would point out, and it's something that we're very focused on, is how many people are close to retirement. So we've lost a third of our workforce since 2012. In the next 5 years, we're going to lose another third. So we are losing a lot of very experienced people in both rank and file and managers. And we need to be focused in terms of succession planning. We need to be focused in terms of knowledge transfer. We need to be focused in terms of being competitive in the workplace, because we need to replace the expertise that's going out the door. It is a concern that's not just unique to Metro North. It is a concern that the entire railroading industry is experiencing right now. And it's something that I know that MTA HQ knows about. It's something that we're working on with them. But I think that your concerns are frankly well placed, Chuck. I think we need to get more qualified people in these positions and make it attractive for them to stay.
Mike, please.
We have 184 maintenance positions open. Now, that's an area that John spent a great deal of time focusing on his statement. I'd like to know exactly, not now, but you can do it over the summer, exactly what you're doing to fill those positions.
I would be happy to get you that information in that degree of detail. It's something that we're working on very closely, and our HR group is very, very engaged in terms of trying to fill vacancies as quickly as possible. So probably given the hour, it's not something that we can get you in that degree of detail, but I'm happy to get you that information. We have that information.
And during what hours of the evening?
We work pretty much around the clock, as John said, between the rushes. We have tie gangs, production gangs that are working during the day. The undercutter, we started during the day, but then we went to evenings because it was hitting the operations too hard. In the evenings, we run our CWPs, which are machines which tend to deliver and pick up materials. We put down all the riprap for Sandy at night. And then, of course, our weekend jobs start Friday night and go all the way till Monday morning. So it's day and night.
Neil Zuckerman, in a carefully detailed memorandum to the board, outlined, as he had in various articles that he has written, some of the areas in respect of which we have not been providing the kind of performance that is expected of us. It seems to me that one thing you can constructively do over the course of the next month or two is to put together in writing, not just an oral presentation, but in writing a presentation of here's my problem, here's what I'm going to do about it, and here's when I will start doing it, and finally, here's what I need in order to do it. A plan of your own rather than having one conceived by the chairman. It seems to me that you ought to do that sooner rather than later. And indeed, you've got the beginnings of it already in the mea culpa speech I heard a few moments ago. But it seems to me you ought to add to that, what do I need to do it? When am I going to accomplish it? And how am I going to? Somebody's determined to cut me off, and they're right.
We're all getting cut off.
A statement concerning the Hudson River ticket. I endorse it. I applaud it. It's necessary. It's appropriate. Thank you.
First, let me say I appreciate your mea culpa. It's certainly an issue that the board and committee in particular has noticed and has discussed with you in a variety of ways. I think that the concept of helping us understand your plan of attack would be worthwhile, and you have a month or two to get that done, which we would very much appreciate seeing. Secondly, I think that it's time for the staff to share with the committee its wish list for expansion, because you often have expansion needs that aren't as obvious to us as they are to you. So if you could also plan over your summer to provide that information, it would be very helpful. And lastly, the support, the ADA support you do through 511 is invaluable, but I'm not sure that it's known to everybody. And I think a little oomph in your publicity might be helpful.
Yeah, we can absolutely do that. I mean, it's advertised on our webpage, but you're right, it's been such a long-standing program. I don't know that we've pushed it more recently than that, so we can certainly make efforts to do that just to acquaint the population that the program exists and hopefully get more people to subscribe to it.
Thank you. Anything else from the committee? In that case, Justin, could we?
Good morning. The safety report can be found on page 19. The customer accident rate is 25% lower than the previous 12 months. The employee lost time injury rate is down 10% versus the previous 12 months. Our community outreach program tracks reached over 29,000 individuals in May, bringing the total for the year to 58,000. And finally, we continue to populate Waze, the GPS navigation app, with a warning message instructing drivers not to turn onto the tracks as they approach our grade crossings. This concludes the safety report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Hearing none. Justin, I appreciate that you gave us a photo in our book of the award that you won. Metro North has won many awards through the years, but this one is especially sweet to us, so thank you. In that case, may we have Chief McCann?
Try again? There we go. System-wide, major felonies are down. 6 crimes for the month of June, so it's a reduction of 23%. Year-to-date, we're down about 4%, which translates into 6 crimes, but that's system-wide. Metro North specific, for the month of June, we're down 8%, which is really just 1 crime. Burglary continues to be an issue for us. 9 of the 14 burglaries year-to-date occurred in Grand Central Terminal, but 7 of those 9 burglaries were the Rite Aid barring notices that we put up for repeat shoplifters. As a result, the burglaries, although they show a substantial increase, really are just a reflection of a change in policy for the Rite Aid stores. We're happy to note that most of the other crimes in the system are down. Grand larcenies, of course, being up by 2. But the grand larcenies, once again, are related to unattended property left on the platform or left on the trains. One item of note is our homeless assistance program has been successful, not just because the summer months are here and it's a little bit easier for the homeless to find places to go out on the street level, but also because our homeless assistance unit has been able to render some permanent solutions to our chronic homeless people. We've reached out to them and gotten them some support from various city agencies, and as a result, the homeless population has been reduced. We'll be ramping up again as the weather gets colder, and it'll be upon us probably sooner than we want it to be. As far as other burglaries go, for the month of June, we did have 3, and none of those were in the Rite Aid area. The 3 had to do with tools stolen from the Hopewell yard, some copper taken from the Mount Vernon East yard, and someone broke into the coffee shop and stole the cash register out of the Croton Harmon station. But outside of that, overall, the MTA police are doing very well. Thank you.
Yes, Chuck.
Chief, I notice a significant increase in the hate crimes directed against African Americans. What are you doing about it?
We did notice that there was an increase in graffiti-related issues, and of course there was an issue where a customer was cursing out one of our MTA employees. As a result, we've taken a heightened awareness and instructed the staff whenever they've encountered an individual that appears to be getting overly aggressive to let us know about it immediately. There have been some highly publicized YouTube videos that were put out as well, and that was an issue of great concern to us. And once again, we did the investigation on that individual, and were able to come up and identify that particular person, and are working with the district attorney's office to determine whether or not any charges are going to be brought against that particular person.
My concern is as follows. About a year ago, in the New York City Transit Police, under Joe Fox, there was noticed a dramatic increase in anti-Semitic incidents. And together with Owen, they went to work in a variety of ways, including Grand Central Station, going into the bathrooms to stop that sort of stuff and the like. And that has had an apparent impact by diminishing the number of those incidents. I don't want this to get out of hand. Whether it be against Muslims, whether it be against blacks, whether it be against Jews, whether it be against anyone. Hate crimes are hateful, and they deserve to be nipped in the bud. They are a portent of very bad things to come. I know. So please pay particular attention to this. I don't want this to get out of hand.
Understood.
Thank you. I know there are a number of information items in the book. Would you like to run through those?
I will zip through those as quickly as I can. So the first is the Grand Central Terminal Retail Development Report. It is in the book. Leah Bassnight from MTA Real Estate is here in case anybody has any questions. Okay, hearing none. The environmental audit, Rich, very quickly.
Yes, very quickly. First, I want to acknowledge Karen Timko, who recently retired as our head of environmental compliance. Karen really changed the paradigm at Metro North, worked with communities, worked with outfits such as the Hudson River Keeper, and had really a fantastic and distinguished career, and made us a better and safer place. I also want to quickly introduce Joanne Riley. Joanne is our new Deputy Director of Environmental Compliance. We're very glad to have her. She has a lot of experience on the railroad in the operating departments and with environmental compliance. The summary report on the audit is in the book. There were no new unremediated violations identified in the latest audit. We also highlighted some accomplishments such as enhanced training for our capital department and new fuel leak detection systems. I'll take any questions.
Questions? Hearing none.
Okay, the next action item is the track program quarterly update, which is obviously very timely in light of this morning's conversation. Glenn is here if you have any questions on the track program quarterly update.
Questions? Moving on.
PTC. The PTC is on the agenda for CPOC this afternoon, so the CPOC presentation is actually in this month's book if you have any questions on that.
I just have one question. The M7s and the M3, the married pairs, it counts as like it's one car. If you put it in one, it's for both cars. Is that the deal?
The way we report is on a per pair basis, so yes, the pair counts as one.
Thank you.
Chuck?
I have a question. If it's report, area of service as well. What are we doing about it?
So the numbers are reflective of the fact that a couple of our pieces of machinery have been out of service long-term for construction projects. There's one out in the north, what we call the North End Axis, that is actually part of East Side Axis. That's why you see low figures for Grand Central Terminal. The others are not in bad shape, but we have a long-term outage out there.
Let me make a point, if I may. First, let me ask you this. Why are they out in connection with East Side Access?
I think that at the 47...
Your mic went off.
At the 47th Street cross passageway, MTACC is taking the existing ADA elevator and lowering it down to their concourse so that people from their concourse can get to the cross passageway and get to the street. That is ongoing work right now, and that is going to be out probably for, I think, about another year.
About how long?
I think one more year it's going to be out. I think the short answer...
Went off again.
During construction, MTACC ran into, I believe, rock down in the shaftway, so that caused delays.
John?
good that Randy happens to be here, so we'll caucus with Randy after the meeting.
John had.
If I could Justin actually solve the mystery of the mics. I guess the system is set up such that whenever a new person clicks their mic on, the other mics go off, so only one mic can be on at a time.
You just clicked mine off.
Can I ask one question about the PTC? I know we'll get into that at.
Yeah.
Obviously, we have seen correspondence from a variety of individuals relating to the New Jersey Transit situation on the west of Hudson line and the assumptions being made that they will not be finished by December 31st, 2018, either interim-wise or completed-wise, whatever terminology you want to use. What impact, if any, is that going to have on our service?
So let's back up to the Port Jervis for a second. So we're still waiting for them to give us the equipment that our forces will install. We continue to believe that they will be able to do that. So as far as our own compliance posture, we should be okay on the Port Jervis. We should have the equipment in so that all the hardware is installed in compliance with the legal mandate. In terms of their system as a whole, they have been, I think, and we'll actually talk about this a little bit later at CPOC, they've been pursuing what is known as alternative or substitute criteria. So they've actually made a submission to the FRA that allows them to get into revenue service demonstration, or actually satisfy, actually more accurately, satisfy the revenue service demonstration piece of the compliance requirement in a different way. And my understanding is that FRA has accepted that. So they're still, I think, making every effort possible to be fully in compliance with the four sort of indicia that we've talked about before the end of the year. We're most focused on the Port Jervis because we need that hardware for us to be in compliance. We're similarly incentivized to have that done, so we remain confident that we will get those deliveries.
Has made some statements about New Jersey Transit service on their lines. Is that going to be affected by whether or not they comply or get a waiver from the FRA with regard to their service enhancements? Because what I've read has made it clear that they're not going to allow New Jersey Transit equipment on their lines unless they are PTC compliant. That's the impression I got.
Yeah, there's a lot. I mean, without getting too in the weeds on this, I mean, there are a lot of issues that will need to be resolved, frankly, across the Northeast with respect to some of these interoperability issues between now and the end of the year. We have interoperability issues with them. They have interoperability issues with Long Island. I mean, it's a fairly complicated aspect of the whole PTC mandate. So I think the answer is, I think it will become clearer as the year goes on.
Yes, Chuck.
Have there been any entrapments in the elevators at Grand Central?
I am not aware of any. We've had a couple out in the territory, but I don't recall any in GCT.
Is then simply that the elevator is out of service or the escalator is out of service as contrasted with a breakdown?
It's a mix of both. The one elevator that we talked about for East Side Access is out of service for construction, but we do have occasional malfunctions that require them to be taken out of service and then fixed.
Do we now maintainers at Grand Central and elsewhere, or are they in-house?
So it's a mixed bag. There is the escalators outside of Grand Central are maintained under contract. The elevators outside of Grand Central are maintained by my folks but inspected under contract. And in Grand Central, it's the reverse, where the inspections are other people and we do the maintenance.
Additional questions? Hearing none?
Moving right along, there is a real estate information item that's going to go before Finance in a little bit for approval to acquire CSX's train yard, which is adjacent to Metro North's Poughkeepsie Yard and the North Water Street Maintenance Facility. The acquisition will ease congestion in the yard and support future growth. Any questions about that item?
Questions? Hearing none, there are no action items for today. We will have a more thorough briefing on the rules of conduct, and we'll move right on to procurements, please. Al? Oh, whoops, yep.
May I make, namely that before that briefing, council be asked to render an opinion on the issue of those rules that we have raised in question.
Yes, that's given. Thank you. Procurements.
Good morning. There are 2 procurements in this month's package totaling $6 million. There are no non-competitive procurements. There are 2 competitive procurements, and there are no ratifications. The first competitive procurement is the request for a proposal to design, manufacture, test, and deliver new passenger diesel, DC electric dual-mode locomotives for Metro North's Harlem, Hudson, and New Haven lines. The scope of work for this solicitation shall include the design, manufacturing, testing, and delivery of the locomotives, which will also include long-term technical support, deliverables, capital spares, and all required items. Maintain the fleet. Excuse me. The second competitive procurement is for a 5-year competitively negotiated miscellaneous service contract for a not-to-exceed amount of $6 million to 6 bus companies. The pre-qualified vendors will furnish emergency and scheduled bus services on an as-needed basis for railroad passengers and crews between stations throughout the New York City and Connecticut operating territories during scheduled and emergency work. May I please have a vote on these items?
Are there questions on this? I only wish to say that any way that locomotive process, because we're not even at procurement yet, can be expedited, please let's see it happen. And you have committees of the board that have been working on how to expedite. Please reach out, see what we can do. Thank you. Those in favor? Any opposed? Thank you.
For the operations report on page 112, just a quick question and perhaps a correction might be needed. So it says year-to-date standees on the Harlem line is 115, but it's 123 for June. So I don't know if that just needs to be updated. But my question is, or from a misunderstanding.
That's actually correct the way it's actually stated, because it's actually the average daily number of standees. So you can actually have a pretty high month of standees, but your annual average would be lower than that monthly number.
And with regards to the length of the consist, so I know the Harlem line often does run a 12-car consist. What is the percentage of train runs that are in that 12-car consist?
Jim McCormick can add into this, but there's actually 4 trains that run as 4 trains that run as 12-car consists, and we'd like to run more longer trains, but we have 2 issues, actually 3 issues. One is we don't have enough electric cars, which is why the M9A procurement is critical. We also need to have additional yard space, and we have basically a third rail substation need on the Harlem line as well that goes for 2 or 3 future capital programs to be able to supply power to the increased levels of service we need to provide.
Any additional questions? Continuing?
I think that's it, Susan. Oops, sorry.
Motion to read. Thank you.